Hello. It's 4 o'clock on Sunday, October 24th. Almost the end of the month, but how's everyone doing? How are you? Welcome. It's Sunday live drawing time. Yay. So, this Sunday live drawing, before that, hi, my name is Mai Ryuno. I'm an artist and educator at Playful in Monterey, California. And I host Sunday drawing sessions on Sundays. And this is where I share my knowledge and experience in teaching and doing some drawing with you. Not only to teach you how to draw, but more so of how to see things that is helpful for your drawing. And today I'm going to talk about a grid, as the title says. Grid is very helpful. The grid is pretty helpful for you to create some realistic drawing, which we've been talking about in these sessions, more focusing on realistic drawing. But after with the way you start seeing something in your reference for drawing, that can be also useful for other types of drawings and paintings that you might be interested in making. So today, the grid, and let me start with, and also during this session, if you have any questions about whatever I'm going to be talking about, please feel free to leave a comment, and I'm going to try to answer your questions during this session. Also, if you are watching this as a recording, again, please leave your any questions, anything in the comment below. So let's get started. So today, October 24th, it's Sunday, and today's session is about grid for drawing. So I'm going to start with this very, very basic question that why grid for drawing? Why do you want to use a grid for drawing? Answers here, but think about why you might want to use a grid for drawing. What is helpful by using it is the grid can help you transfer the elements you see in your reference, such as photographs, to transfer that to your drawing. And imagine if you just look at a photograph and try to transfer all the image into your, let's say, paper. It's really hard to put everything in the right place on a different surface. So the grid can help you to place things and somewhat accurate, somewhat close to how they were placed in your reference photographs or maybe something else. So that's what we're gonna do here today, and I wanted to share some examples that my students did in the past in class. And first few examples, actually a lot, 18 of them. So as you can see, these drawings are all done based on the same reference, which had bison. I love bison, and I gave assignment. This was a quick exercise for students to do the grid drawing, just to kind of get a handle of how to create grid and do a little drawing. And as you can see, I showed the same reference to all the students on the screen, and they drew, and the results are quite different. But if you look at each one of them, the placement of the parts of the bison, the body and the background and things are pretty similar throughout all those drawings. But depending on how you see the dark light and shadow, dark light, shadow, light and shadow, shapes, things like that, there are results are quite different at the end. So even though this grid method is helpful for you to place things in the right place, it doesn't mean that you can make your drawing exactly look like how you see it in your reference, but you still have room for your creativity perhaps, or some other things to learn to make your drawing look closer to what you see in your photographs or references. But they're all pretty fun drawings. Some are darker, some are lighter, some are more realistic look than the others are kind of a little bit of character, cute illustration type. But they're all fun drawings that students made. Couple other drawings that kind of leads me to the next session, which I'm thinking of talking about grayscale, but this was done, and these were done in a different class that they use pattern to fill some shadings. So it's not only the grid is there, but also the fun elements are within that. But as you can see, all these drawings, the shapes and proportion, those things are done pretty nicely in relation to the reference that students were looking at to create these drawings. So the placement of the elements is the key for today's session. How can you get that right place? Put elements into right place in your drawing to help you achieve good shapes and proportion and composition. So the talk that I'm going to give you today is based on how you do this by hand. So the things that you will need to use will be some kind of reference image, photos, and a ruler to create grid on paper. And I said pencil, but you can also use other drawing mediums like pen and charcoal. These bison drawings are done with charcoal, and these faces with pattern are done with pen. So if you prefer to use something like that, charcoal or pen markers, you are also welcome to use. If you're using pencil, you might want to have eraser. Also, classes that I'm teaching, I've taught in the class, students done mostly black and white mediums. But if you wanted to do this with color photos, you might want to use like color pencils, and eventually you might want to make some type of paintings. Then you might use paints, watercolor things. So the mediums are quite open, but for today in this session we'll look at things that are done more pen pencil, more drawing materials that you can grab. So let's start getting into some details, some steps. So grid method, there are a couple of key steps that you definitely don't want to mess up. You want to follow as accurate as you can. One is to keep the aspect ratio between your reference and your drawing. And number 2 is to create a grid that's the same between, again, your reference and your drawing, which before you start drawing, you need to prepare the paper. So you wanted to keep both the ratio of the format of the reference to drawing, and then into the small section you're going to create with grid needs to be exactly, or no, can be a little bit off, it's okay, but it's pretty much you want it to be the same between reference and your drawing. So that being said, the things I want you to pay attention to look at is the aspect ratio between those two things, and also the grid size between those two things. So as always, drawing involves a lot of steps. So first, I'm going to talk about the steps that I took when I hosted a workshop for grid drawing. And we'll go from there. And please let me know anytime if you have any questions. But start with steps to prepare for your drawing with grid and things. Just to give you an idea of where going towards with these steps is shown in these two images. The left image is a picture that I prepared for the workshop. It's an octopus in the water. It turned into black and white. It was originally color, you're gonna see. And the right image is the drawing that students created. And I'm gonna show you the whole thing later. But so how did I prepare between the reference and the drawing or paper before students started the drawing? So first, you pick a reference, whatever you wanted to use. I say photograph, but it might be some kind of illustration or something depending on what you're trying to draw. But in this case, this was just pulled from online, a picture of octopus, and I measure it. Measuring of it is you can use ruler to measure, but I imagine these days we pull pictures more online and digitally. So in that case, if for example you go to your smartphone and you go to the edit and crop, there you can see the ratio of the original photograph, so that you know which ratio you're dealing with. So I did that with this photograph, and the ratio was 2 to 3, means that the vertical line, the height is some type of 2 number, and the width is 3. I'm going to talk about this some kind of number later, but in the smartphone or any digital format, until you go to the actual size section, it's quite different from how we used to look at photo. It was a physical, and the print had a specific size, but in digital world it can go really small to big, with the same photo. So just ratio, remember this one is 2 to 3. And what I wanted to do for the workshop, I wanted to do it in square because square is a little easier to deal with when it comes to creating grid and understanding all the numbers. So if you are like me, not so good at maths and numbers, first you might want to try with the square so it's easier to get a little get an understanding of how this thing works. So I cropped that same photo to ratio 1 to 1, means the height and width are same length, 1 to 1, so that it's easier to deal with. And from there, it's not, this isn't for the grid, but this is something that I've been talking about in different live drawing sessions in the past. If you're interested in, please check out other videos. But I prepped the image for students to be able to draw a little simpler than this full color detail photo. So I changed the contrast and posterize it to separate the light and shadow. More not so detailed smooth, but as chunks. Then I turned it black and white as you saw in the other photo. Again, the purpose of it is to be able to see complex image with not only the shape and light and shadow, but colors. Try to remove that and get to the essence of the shape of the octopus with some light and shadow. Simplify it. So turn it into black and white and put a grid over it. How you do it is I'm going to talk about in the next section, but this one I did all that with Photoshop. So again, if you're interested in learning how to do this in Photoshop, I am happy to create a session about it. But turning the images from the realistic, more detailed, nice photo to posterize, more graphic, to black and white, to prepare for a simplified view to help you start drawing are a couple of previous videos I did as live streaming, so please check it out on the channel. And so this is how I got the grid over the picture. I actually did it by hand here, but for this presentation I did it with the Photoshop. So you can do it digitally, some parts, and do it by hand, other parts. Also, if you have ways to do it. Otherwise, you need to print out the photograph. Then you draw the grid over the photograph like I did for the workshop. So I say here your surface size can be any size. It's related to what I mentioned a little bit ago, that in the digital world, the actual inch size doesn't matter, because it can be any size, and that can apply to this method too. Once you understand the fundamental of how these things work, it can be start with very small image to make your drawing, painting, things like that, quite like any size, really, really big, like you can put it on the wall and things, or somewhat bigger than the size that maybe you see reference on your smartphone. So it can go any size, But again, the key is to keep the ratio and also the grid size. So because I wanted to keep the I wanted to make the drawing square, I created square image from the rectangular image of the octopus. And when you prepare paper, also it needs to be the same shape as 1:1 ratio paper, but the size of the paper can be any size. Actually can be really tiny. It would be really hard to draw, but 1 inch by 1 inch, or 1 foot by 1 foot, 1 yard by 1 yard, or 100 yards. Any size you can go, as long as you keep the ratio and your format to be a square. So maybe your original image is this size and can go up and up and up, but you need to stretch both height and width same way, not to mess that part up. Then how you create grid over is, as I said, I'm not so good at math, but the grid also needs to be the same between the reference and your drawing. And in this case, how I did was the length of both height and width divided by 4, because you see that there are 4 columns and rows in each section to make 16 squares. So you need to divide the length of height and width divided by 4 to create those squares. So for example, if the height and width are 16 inches, you divide it by 4, and each little square should be 4 inch by 4 inch, right? So a small square will be. So length, you put the number here, and by quarter of it is the each square, depending on how many squares, how many columns and rows you wanted to have, those numbers will shift. So if you wanted to have 5 squares each, you put 5. So numbers shift depending on how many boxes you want. The more boxes you have, the small details, maybe small placement can be more accurate, but you there is a lot of more attention you need to put into to do a tiny squares. And although it's the same amount of work in terms of the image is the same, but it's a lot of work to go one by one after you finish the grid. So you decide which number you wanted to pick, but in the case of square, it's easier because the length, height and width are same. So use the same number divided by 4 to get the grid. That's why I chose to do square to make it easier. But you might think that you don't want to cut your photo. This is the perfect photo, and I wanted to use this specific photo in the specific ratio. Then you can do that too. It's the same. Again, fundamental principle is to keep the ratio as you stretch or shrink the image. So if your original photo ratio was 2:3, you wanted to have your paper in the same ratio. If your paper is not in that size, you wanted to measure and cut. So how you do it is you times 2 and 3 put the same number, and you stretch it, shrink it. For example, I wanted to make the height of this drawing to be, let's say, 10 inches. I wanted to do 10-inch the height. That's times 5 to the number 2. So number 5 also you need to do times 5 with this number 3. So it will be, the final size for your paper will be 10 inches by 15 inches. Both 2 and 3 times 5. So do that little math and create that your paper surface to match the ratio size of your reference. You can cut it or you can just draw the lines, and just so that you know where's the end of your picture. From there, it's the same thing again. The grid is length divided by number of rows and columns. So in this case, its numbers are different. The height to the columns are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 columns, and the rows are 4. So you need to do different numbers. So this number here needs to be divided by 4. And this number here, length of whatever the inches, divided by 6. And this 4 and 6 are random numbers I picked. It's easier if you pick the number that you can't actually divide it by the number of the height and width. So length divided by number of rows and columns, that even can be adjusted depending on the size of your actual surface for your drawing paintings. Once you get these boxes done, you need to draw same boxes both on your reference and your drawing paper or any surface that you are using. Then you're ready to draw. Yay! So ready to draw. How you're gonna do it is a little more prep actually. To start drawing is you put numbers, same numbers. In this case, I cut it, but if you're making one thing, you don't cut. But after you create a grid, you don't have to put number in the front like this because you don't want to see numbers in your drawing. But think this way. Your number 1 to the top left piece, it's the same number 1 on your paper, that's top left corner section, and goes like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The number just both numbers between the reference and paper correlate. So anytime you look at each section, it will be the same place that you're looking at on the paper. You can go from top to bottom. Numbering, it doesn't matter, but what it matters is that same numbers go to both reference and your surface paper. You'll know why this is this way later, but so then ready to draw. Like one by one, this is the key. How you wanted to draw in the grid is don't look at the whole picture. You just look at the picture one section at a time. I changed the drawing here. This is positive negative image of the original photograph, which I talked about in positive negative live drawing session. So this one, why I put it in positive negative is to help you see again the image as simple as possible. And we did that in the live session. Before that, you draw the positive negative by following the outline of the shapes. So although this is completely filled with two colors, how you want to see this is trying to see one by one, like section number 1, it's here. What you need to draw is just this shape, right? And the next one to the left. And the next box, number 2 box, it's technically nothing is there. They're actually in the photograph. There is some grays, dark grays there, but no significant shape to be a part of octopus shape. So you can skip it at the beginning and go to number 3, and there are a couple of one long shape and one short shape with a little curve. It's there, so you just draw the outline of those shapes. And section number 4, there is nothing, so you can skip and go like that one by one. Just draw simple outline to capture the essential shape, and we'll go from there for details, but I'm trying to keep these steps and way of drawing simple to start. So you can learn positive and negative, and you can do this grid drawing with positive and negative by looking at just one section at a time. Number 1 to number 2, 1, number 2 to number 2 between your reference and drawing, and keep going till you finish and see what happens at the end in your drawing. And if there is anything that looks a little bit off, you can adjust, but theoretically you should get this, at least this outline of octopus at the end of drawing section by section. Another way to simplify your view, and which I also talked in the previous sessions, is this is all photoshopped images, and if you're interested in learning how to turn your photograph into those simplified images, I have the last session I talked about how to use Photoshop to simplify your images for your drawings. So something like that might be also helpful to just turn it into just simple line drawing. There are some sections a little more complex. I just threw some pieces into the to the right image, but again, you can start drawing anywhere. You don't have to do 1, 2, 3, 4. Technically, you can go from anywhere and just, again, section by section, follow what's in that small section and draw it. What you see in the section, and everything is done and connected, you will get the image like this at the end of your drawing. Then after that, you're gonna start adding more details within the octopus and also the background by shading and things. But to start, simplify your views and try to capture the essential shape. This time it's a little section at a time. So the prep of the grid is to give you those small sections. And the key is don't think too much. Just really purely follow what you see. Even sometimes I suggest to cover the rest of the sections besides the area you're drawing, and don't look at anything but just focus on the section where you're working on and see what happens. It's fun. So how you doing, everyone? Please let me know if you have any questions about this gridding and other things I've been talking about. And if you're watching this as recording, also Please let me know in the comment if you have any questions or requests of whatever you might want to learn in relation to drawing. Today I'm talking about how to prepare the grid for your drawing, and also in addition to that I'm touching upon some things that I talked previously to help you start drawing before you get to the details of drawing, as positive, negative, outline, contour. So if you're interested in learning more about those drawing techniques, please check out other videos as well. So hopefully, I am really not good at math, but I've been teaching this for a while, and hopefully the way I'm explaining it makes sense. If you try it and have any questions later, please come back and let me know. I can make another video to follow up with the questions as well. So that's kind of basic steps of how you prepare between the reference and drawing paper or any other surface with grid, and just draw and see what happens. If you make one by going through these steps, I would love to see your drawing. So it will be great if you share it with me by maybe emailing hello@playfulgrand.com. I'd love to see that. So definitely the grid method it's been helping my students to be able to place elements in that reference to transferring to their drawings more accurately than just trying to do by freehand. But again, I am not saying that all photographic realism is the best way. So I'm sharing those techniques to help you see things in a way that's in that reference and photo realistic way. Yeah, knowing is good and be able to is good, but it doesn't mean that best art is the best photographic realism. So I just wanted to make sure. Of course, creativity isn't this structured. It can be so many different ways, but here just to help you see things more realistic for drawing, but you can go all different directions from there, and I love everyone's creativity. So somehow I would love to see all the creativity. So talking about more creative way of using this method beyond just trying to draw something more realistic way is what I wanted to introduce as fun maybe game when you get together with your friends, families, maybe for holidays and things. It's really stormy and looks like rain's coming here, so maybe winter you spend more time at home with other people, and this method is really fun when you do it with other people. So let me show you how I did. This was a workshop I actually did with 5 different people with grid. So fun drawing game idea by using the grid method. These are steps. It's the same step as I talked about for your individual own drawing, but the last part is a little different. So how you do it is grid an image, grid a reference, same way as we talked about, and create the paper, grid the paper. And this is when this happens. I cut paper into individual pieces like puzzle for this fun game and number them on the back, both between the reference and the paper, so that you know which one is which afterwards. So you actually cut the reference that needs to be cut it up on paper, or it could be done digitally, but let me know if you want to know how I will do digitally. I did that for class, but it might be easier. Print it out, grid, cut, and also have the same proportion of paper, cut it up, number them in the same way as between reference and paper, number back on both sides, and cut them into pieces, and just turn them over and shuffle them and give pieces to whoever you're with, participants in this game, just randomly. No one can see the front yet, just turn them over and give them to each participant. It might be you might get one if you have a lot of people and same number of sections, or you might get more than one if you have more pieces than people, but you give them pieces randomly. Then just draw, have some pencils and pens and things. Maybe color will be fun, color pencil, pens, and just individually draw without knowing what other people are doing. And after you finish drawing, or as you're going, have them up on the wall or somewhere that you can see the process of making one drawing by multiple people together. And I wanted to share some photos. So 5 people working together, and as you can see in the back, there are pieces of paper to show where things go, 1, 2, 3, and each one of them got at least three pieces plus 1. Then whoever finishes first can take extra pieces or whatever you come up with, and individually drawing. And as they finish drawing, and this one, as you can maybe see, small piece of the reference to the bigger piece of paper, and we did it with patterns, which as I said, I will be talking about grayscale in the future and using of patterns for drawings, but that's what we did here. Then as each one of them finish, each piece putting up on the wall, and one by one it gets there, and you see the finished drawing. And it's more interesting and creative because everyone sees things differently. Everyone chooses different patterns to use. Also sees the light and shadow different. Yeah, without knowing, surprisingly, or it should be, the lines connect really, really well between different drawings because everyone followed, without knowing the other pieces, everyone followed just the individual section, what's in the reference, although not knowing the others, what others are doing, how they are doing. So this might be kind of fun, creative drawing game that you can do when you get together with other people. And it doesn't matter if it's something's a little bit off, that's just fun, kind of cool drawing that you can make with other people. So try it. Let me know if you had fun. We definitely did. Let me know if you have any questions about the grid, but grid can be very structured and rigid, and you can get really nice realistic drawing by using so, but also you can use it for something fun, creative project that you can maybe do something like this on your own too, changing a way of drawing between each section, maybe color, no color, just lines, maybe filled with patterns or more, realistic shading, all that. See, fun stuff. Be creative. So that's all I have, and the last thing I wanted to go over is the summary of today's learning about the grid. Is that two main important things: keep the ratio of the grid, keep the ratio of the original format of the oh sorry, original format of the reference to the paper, or if you have certain ratio that you wanted to work with, like I did with square, you cut the reference into the ratio, whichever you wanted to do, but keep that between reference and drawing. Number two is after you make sure the ratio of the whole image is the same between those, keep the same number of rows and columns between the reference and drawing, and draw the grid lines. If you're using pencil to do so, keep it light, keep it very light. You need to do it on paper anyways. You can prepare the photograph with Photoshop, but you need to do it on paper with, pencil is probably the best because you can erase it. You want it to erase as you go. And also keep the lines light, very light, so you won't see them unless you wanted to see them. You won't see them at the end of the drawing, and make sure to keep erasing so you won't have division between sections in the final drawing. Also, don't think too much. This can actually be applied to other types of drawing too, that focus on that lines and shape instead of thinking about, am I drawing the octopus, am I drawing this. Really simplify the view to look at the shape and the outline of the shape. If you get it, you will get the right shape. So don't think too much and draw section by section. Really purely follow what's in each section without thinking too much, without judging anything. Just keep going and see what happens. And if you're using pencil, you can always erase and fix. Even if you're using pens and markers, something that you cannot erase with the eraser, look at this. It's really forgiving too. Adding more and subtracting is not possible, but you can add more and fix. And looking at a big picture, tiny details aren't as important as the big shapes. So you can start with pencil and make sure the shapes are good. Then you can start filling with more the mediums that you can erase also. So there are different steps that you can take depending on how you want to work. You want to have fun and go crazy, or you want to be more following the rules and try to get everything right. So maybe your personality, how much you can be, you can go crazy, you can be loose, or more rigid way of working, controlled I should say. So these are the things I want you to remember when you try your drawing with grid, and please let me know how you do it, and if you have any questions, also any requests that you might want to learn for your drawing, please let me know in the comment below. So that's it for today, and thank you for being here. If you're watching this as a recording, please let me know if you have any questions, comments in that comment below. And if you do any of the individual drawing or some kind of collaborative drawing, please share with me by emailing hello@playfulground.com. I'm on also Instagram and Facebook at Playful Ground. So it's a little stormy here, but again, new week won't be coming. Tomorrow is Monday, and have a nice, inspiring, creative week. And I will see you in the next Sunday live drawing. Bye.